Hello, and welcome to the PC Gaming Weekspot, your recap of the last 7 days in PC video gaming. My name is Colin Mahern, and joining me this week, all we have to do now is take these lies and make them true somehow. All we have to see is that I don't belong to you, and he doesn't belong to me. Yeah, it's the one and only Mr. Matthew Castle.
Hello. That feels like a pop song reference.
It is. Can you go further than just recognizing it's a song lyric?
No.
All right. Those are the lyrics to Freedom by George Michael, because Matthew, we have passed Freedom Day in the United Kingdom, and we are probably going to have Incarceration Day in a month's time. Yeah, exactly.
Spike Day.
It is. I mean, the numbers have gone mental already, haven't they? They're up to after the Euros, they're up to like 60,000.
Anyone who watches Weekspot or listens to Weekspot is clearly a very sensible, decent person. They're not selfish people who listen to this. So they'll be careful with their masks no matter what, because they know it's not about them. It's about people who are less fortunate than them in their immune systems that you're out to protect. You're elderly and you're the sickly. So, I'm confident in our little weak spot bubble we'll be okay.
Nationwide, little bit more touch and go.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, when the lads,
I don't know, of course.
when the lads in charge are going like isolation, it's like doesn't give me great confidence.
It's not ideal.
No, not ideal is one way of putting it, most certainly. But fingers crossed.
Yes.
I guess. Matthew, it's the summer. It's very hot. You enjoy the occasional soft drink, correct?
The occasional soft drink. I love them.
Well, how about a craft beverage?
Oh, tell me more.
Well, this is just for American listeners and viewers, so those in the UK can't taste excellent flavours such as juniper, dreamsicle, and aged vanilla.
Oh, sounds delish.
So if you want to taste some of these, if you want to buy some of Wild Bill's drinks, head to drinkwildbills.com and at the checkout use the discount code CHEERS15 and you'll get 15% off your first order.
That's CHEERS15 for 15% off your first order of Wild Bill's craft beverage soda pops.
Yeehaw! Matthew, let's look on the brighter side of life and let's talk some video games because there's quite a lot to talk about. So, grab that crank of yours, open that
You're really telling me to open my mouth wide open on Freedom Day, the day that the virus is spreading through the world.
You can do you have a mask handy? You could open your gob with the mask. Matthew, I have some information snacks for you.
Info snacks for his gob.
So, at time of recording, Ubisoft's new Tom Clancy game hasn't been revealed. It will be revealed by the time you're listening/watching this. We don't know what it is yet, so we'll probably talk about it next week maybe. It's a shooty bang game.
There was a clip of it on the IGN Twitter feed.
Yes.
It looked first-person shooter set in the Division verse.
Oh, is it the Division?
Yeah.
So is it the Heartland thing?
It might be.
Oh, all right. There you go.
Well, it looked like it was the New York from the Division that they were running around.
Right. Yeah. That's fair. If it's interesting, we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah.
Psychonauts 2, which hopefully will be an interesting game. I know the two of us are excited for it. That has an invincibility toggle, so the players of all ages and skills and abilities and all that can complete the game. Developer Double Fine tweeted the news. They said, all people should be able to enjoy games, all ages, all possible needs. It's an ongoing and important process for our industry and a challenge we need to meet. End of the day, we want you to have fun, to laugh, to experience a story that affects you on whatever terms you want. I mean, the original Psychonauts, quite tough at points. So
yeah, that's mainly because it had a really lousy jump. But the biggest accessibility drive they could do is just say he's got a better jump this time, which it looks like he does.
It does from trailers, yes.
Yeah.
Now, Matthew, sadder news. A lot of delays. Loads of delays.
It better not be Ghostwire Tokyo, because I'm looking forward to that.
Matthew, I'm sorry, Ghostwire Tokyo has been delayed. It's now coming. It's now coming.
Well, if that's been delayed, then it better not be Rainbow Six Extraction after that.
Rainbow Six Extraction has also been delayed, Matthew.
No!
January 2022 is when that's coming.
Oh, God. Oh, well, listen, at least we got Riders of the Republic, right?
Riders Republic has also been delayed, Matthew, by about 2 months to October 28th.
Oh, God. I'm going to be stuck at home with only Resident Evil Reverse to play.
Well, in happier news, Resident Evil Reverse has also been delayed. That's been pushed to 2022.
Oh. What's actually coming out this year? Anything? Great Ace Attorney Chronicles at the end of next week.
Forza Horizon 5 is this year.
Oh, yeah. That's Game of the Year just because it's the Game of the Year.
So, that's good. No, keeping it a little bit sad. We're not talking about delays as such, but the PC version of FIFA 2022, which was announced last week, it's coming on the 2nd of October. The PC version is going to be based on the last gen console version.
Oh.
Because they're touting this new motion tracking thing where we strapped, I don't know, these cool suits to loads of professional footballers, and we're going to have authentic movement and whatever else. And
the famously underpowered PC can't handle it.
Apparently not. I mean, I guess, I don't know the facts and figures, but I doubt PC is a huge market when it comes to FIFA. This is pure speculation.
I wonder if you get into the realms of, like, they used to do those dreadful Wii games, which were basically, it was the same game every year, and they just updated the names. Like, they didn't even update anything else. It was the same, like, literally pixel for pixel, the same game. But they sold it new every year. They're pretty bad with their old. Don't they refer to it as like the legacy versions or something?
I think so. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Well, here's hoping it's not that. Not that I give a single shit about football. But
now you might give a single shit about the next bit of news, because Atlas are teasing 7, Matthew. 7.
I give 7 shits.
Well, depending on what the announcements are, because so they're teasing these 7 Persona-related announcements to celebrate Persona's 25th anniversary. The first of these announcements is set to come in September, and the last is in autumn of next year. Now, they're probably not all going to be game announcements, and that's why I say, you mightn't care all that much about some. It's probably, here's a Joker hoodie or something. It's like, meh.
Really? Imagine if it's 7 Joker hoodies.
Ooh, all different colours.
Spread over the year.
But yeah, fingers crossed, there is some PC-related announcement in there. That would be nice.
Yeah, a PC port of Persona 5 would be jolly, wouldn't it?
It would be good. In other news, 8 years after Company of Heroes 2, Company of Heroes 3 is coming. This was announced last week. The World War II-based RTS is out in 2022, and you, dear listener and viewer, know full well that you're not going to get anything more out of us on Company of Heroes, so if you want more, head to rockpapershotgun.com. In other news.
Know your limitations. That's what I say.
Exactly. And go, this thing happened. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
An all-digital QuakeCon is happening from the 19th of August to the 21st, Matthew. This could be where we get the announcement of the kind of rumoured Quake, or perhaps something on Wolfenstein 3. We're probably not going to get anything on either Indiana Jones or Starfield or, I don't know. August. There might be something on Deathloop. I've had it up to here with Deathloop. So yeah.
I'd hope we'd get a little glimpse of the now delayed Tokyo Ghostwire.
Yeah. Perhaps.
We shall see.
And your final little information snack, Matthew. And there is a reason why I'm including this in a show called the PC Gaming Weekspot. But Judgment, which was the console exclusive and Stadia as well for some reason, series that took the real-time combat from Yakuza. That series is probably dead. And the reason for it is that Takayuki Kimura, who plays the game's lead character, Takayuki Yagami, Kimura is a former boy band member and I think an actor, and he's quite a big deal in Japan.
Right.
And according to Japanese showbiz publication Nikan Taishu, the next game, Lost Judgment, is going to be the last in the series because the talent agency that represents Kimura, they are against a PC port. Sega apparently wanted to make it happen, but Kimura's people said that they have strict control over Kimura's likenesses. So probably maybe saw what happened to Keanu Reeves or other, like some of the actors and actresses in David Cage's games, and they're like, no, we don't want any of that, because with mods on the PC, you can have this person doing whatever. So, and that's apparent. So, yeah, Judgment as a series is probably done because
they could just
they couldn't get it on PC.
Kill a character off, replace him with a different character.
So, from our view in the West, yeah, of course, why not? But apparently, this guy's quite the deal in Japan. So it doesn't appear like that's their. It doesn't appear that that's what they want to do. No, yeah, I think it's quite. Just get as you say, kill him off and bring in somebody different. It's
totally callous.
Kill him off. He's not Kiru, so like.
He's no. I am looking forward to that one though.
Lost Judgment.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He goes undercover in a school, even though he's clearly like a 35-year-old dude.
Yeah. So those are your information snacks for this week. Quite a hefty starter, Matthew, but I hope you've time for a main course because my boy is bringing it. Hugh is bringing it in now. Let's get on to some headlines and hot takes.
Hello, I'm Hugh Edwards. Working in news is exciting.
Yes, Headlines and Hot Takes is the part of the PC Gaming Weekspot where we take you through the bigger news stories of the past week. And there was only one, really, that dominated the headlines since Thursday evening, and I'm sure it will be the talk of the industry for a little while longer. Steam Pal is real, Matthew, but it's called Steam Deck. So, this was indeed announced on Thursday evening with a whole load of IGN coverage. The Steam Deck is what we speculated the Steam Pal could be. It's quite Switch-like. So I'll try and go through the breakdown of the console in as concise a manner as possible. So it has a 7-inch LCD screen that outputs 1280 by 800 resolution. It has a button layout similar to the Elite Xbox controllers in that it has all the face buttons and D-pads and analog sticks and whatever else that you would expect, but it also has 4 paddles on the back. It also has 2 trackpads either side of the screen, control like a mouse, essentially. Valve said that they're similar to what was on the Steam controller. And the console also has a gyro sensor, similar to a Wii U. It runs a custom version of SteamOS out of the box. to give you that console-like experience. It's very Switch-like if you look at it. If you quit out of a game on desktop and then fire it up on the Steam Deck, you can then play on with your cloud save. But it is a mini PC. This is what they're saying. So you will be able to install Windows if you want, and then install the Epic Game Store, the Xbox PC client for Game Pass, Ubisoft Connect, EA Origin, or whatever they're calling it now. It's just a mini PC. And because of that, you can also attach a mouse and keyboard to it. You can hook it up to a monitor or TV. Valve have said as well that there will be an official Steam dock sold separately. But IGN have said that a standard USB-C style dock would also work when hooking it up to a monitor or telly. We're not going to go into all the techiness of it, despite the fact that this is, the most momentous tech corner of all time. But according to Digital Foundry, the Steam Deck's chip is more similar to, when you look at the current console landscape, more similar to the Xbox Series S. It's not as powerful, but there are some similarities. Other kind of hardware facts about the Steam Deck is that Valve says the battery life is between 2 and 8 hours.
That's
quite a disparity.
Window.
Yeah.
That's like when people are like, the game takes about 10 to 20 hours to complete. And he's like, which is it? One is literally twice the size of the other.
Yeah. Big gap there in the middle. It is about double the weight of a Switch, 669 grams versus 398
Have you got strong
grams.
wrists?
And it's a touch bigger in size as well. The comparison I've seen on social media is that it is like the width is similar to two Vitas side by side. A hefty boy. There will be 3 models available, at least at the start. They all have the same internals. It is mostly the hard drive space that's different, although the most expensive model does have this sort of anti-glare screen, and there are cases with some of them. But there is a 64 gigabyte model that does cost £349. There's a 256 gigabyte model that will cost £459, and the 512 gigabyte model costs £569. There is a micro SD to upgrade storage. But because they were saying, this is a PC, a Reddit user emailed Gabe Newell, g.newell@valve.com, and he said, can I upgrade the storage? You're saying this is a PC. The PC is an open platform. And Gabe said that you can, but since this was brought to light, the Steam Deck website has since been updated to say, quote, all models use socketed 2230M.2 modules. It's just to do with the hard drives, right? But then afterwards, in brackets, not intended for end user replacement. So I don't know. But yeah, after the announcement, there was concern as well from some people over a couple of games and anti-cheat software. So like Apex Siege, Destiny 2 and PUBG won't run on Steam Deck right now as it stands. I know it's not out now, but if it was, they wouldn't be able to. But Valve said that they're working on this issue. And all pre-orders went live on Friday, and just Steam was just destroyed by by interest from people, and people trying to get their pre-orders in. But anyone who did at first, they will apparently be getting their Steam Decks in December 2021. But if you tried to pre-order over the weekend, I checked on Sunday, I didn't check just before we started recording, but the earliest availability was Q1 of 2022. It might be different again depending on demand by the time you're listening or watching this.
Wow, what a insightful rundown of the
Matthew,
Steam Deck.
I have soaked up so much Steam Deck stuff because I was how can I make this? There's so many articles, so many videos. I was like, right, let's try and just give the people the facts that they want. But I mean, just an open question to start off, Matthew. What were your initial thoughts when you saw the Steam Deck?
Well, I was surprised. So I think we were a little cynical about the idea of this. I think is a kind of a correct interpretation of what we were saying about it.
I'd agree.
I couldn't really envisage it. I thought maybe, when there were the rumors of this talk, flowing around earlier in the year, I think we were talking about, potentially something which was just like an indie focused machine rather than this kind of full fat thing. So, always good to be surprised by something. My instant reaction was like, man, that is profoundly ugly as a piece of hardware. It really, really reminds me of the Wii U controller, which everyone had no shortage of harsh words for. I don't know what the consensus is on the look of the Steam Deck. I have a feeling that people are like the sort of Steam zealots wouldn't say one way or the other really. I think it looks terrible. I think just as a physical thing, I think it really looks like a prototype, quite a sort of sloppy, careless, just mash. There's always big strips of sort of empty plastic on it. I don't know. It kind of the instant reaction, the instant thing that happened was people kind of like putting it up against the Switch or whatever, and I know a lot, on the hardware front, it's a very different story in terms of like the innards. But just in terms of like as sort of physical design, I think this looks pretty ropey. Those two little pads, the track pads, just look like they're sort of stuck on there. Just looks kind of sort of slapdash and slightly careless, which is always troublesome when you're being asked to then give them a huge amount of money. But maybe that's just me, and I'm just used to quite nice Nintendo hardware, and I feel like the console platform holders will go out of their way to make something which seems kind of quite slick and glamorous, so you can just feel kind of confident about it. This just, I don't know. I feel kind of the same way I felt about the Steam Pad, which was as a thing.
Yeah, I mean, they have, they've dabbled now with hardware a couple of times. Steam machines, bit of a bust, but the Valve Index, that did quite well. Steam controller, bit of a bust. So they are hit and miss.
It just, but even that, I think that they always put function before form in their hardware. Like, I don't think they give a single shit about how something looks, how it is. They just don't value it. It's just about getting the thing to work, and it's a very like PC focus. You don't buy a PC because they look nice. They're powerful things. It's the same with their sort of VR setup. It was cumbersome. It was messy. It absolutely kind of took over the room. But it got results compared to, say, what they try and do with like the modern Oculus, which is or the what's the standalone one called? Not the Journey.
The Quest.
The Quest. That's it. Which is designed to, that looks more like a friendly consumer product that someone might go for. But anyway, that's just the physical form of the thing. Kind of interested on like the sort of the power of this thing, because obviously like the only sort of evidence we have of it is kind of being filmed off screen in like trailers and an IGN video where they were talking about playing. I think it was like Control.
Yeah. Hades was mentioned. Portal.
Hades. I mean, hey, that's I've seen that running at 60 frames on Switch. I know I've full confidence that'll work fine, because it isn't the trade-off here that it's like everything you play everything at basically a 720 resolution, and at that you can play games on sort of like medium to high settings at reasonable frame rates. Seems to be the deal, which is fair. Like, you don't probably need anything more for a screen that size. What I don't really understand is the sales pitch of this being this like mini PC that you plug into a monitor. Because if it is, it's going to be pretty weak. It's not, on paper anyway, it doesn't sound like it would be delivering what you want from a PC experience. But I am told by people who know more about this stuff than me, then like, for that money, what you're getting is pretty decent. It would be hard to build a similarly powered thing for 350 quid if you're just building like a small little underpowered kind of indie machine.
Well, that was kind of going to be my next question, is who do you think this is for? Because, the lowest price is, what did I say, about 350 quid. But the hard drive space in that, 64 gigs. Are there going to be Steam Deck versions of PC games that compress the files a bit more that you can...
I mean, that's a generally like bigger question. Is about like I think a huge part of this thing's success is what steps, if anyone, people take to like prep their games for it. Because I think not to keep making about the Switch in this, but that has been like
that's the obvious comparison.
Yeah,
like,
I've just seen a lot of people that instantly saw it and jumped on like Switch is dead. Switch is dead. I don't think that for a second because. That is a huge platform which people are making bespoke things for, bespoke versions. It's yes, PC stuff already scales, but there are bigger questions like on simple usability fronts, like fonts, for example, on that tiny screen are basically going to make a lot of text-based games an absolute nightmare unless people go in and completely recalibrate them and blow these things up. Like the idea of playing. Like Disco Elysium on this. I mean, yikes! No, thank you. Unless you can really scale that stuff up, it feels like people will have to go in and tidy their stuff up. And are they going to be willing to do that? Is it going to have instantly the size and scale of audience that it's going to be worth doing that? Like, obviously, going forward, you can factor it into your decisions. But this. I already own 1,000 games for this. And it's like, yeah, you own 1,000 unoptimized games for this handheld. I mean, it's like, that's a question you just aren't going to know the answer to until you get it and play it, I guess. Yeah,
there have been some wild takes on this from both. Because, two companies in video games who have, these rabid fan bases, that just are impossible, are Nintendo and Valve. And, this Steam Deck now has them at loggerheads. My thing is better. But to say there's no obvious comparison points, is wrong. Of course there is. You're talking now Valve is coming into the space that Nintendo have dominated, and saying the Switch is dead, of course, is ludicrous. Because you're not going to get Mario, Zelda on the Steam Deck. But a lot of people do consider the Switch their indie machine as well. It's their current Steam Deck. It's how they play their indie PC games on the go. That is something we didn't consider wrongly when we were talking about the Steam Pal originally and talking about how a lot of the indie games are already on Switch, etc. But you get them for a lot cheaper on Steam than you do on Switch.
That is true, and that's a big advantage it has. I mean, this idea of if you already have a Steam library, it's a very different proposition as well to if you don't if you are currently playing on Switch and you've just been buying this stuff off on Switch, then maybe you don't need to rebuy, and there's less appeal here. The other thing you simply can't get your head around is until you hold the thing is how viable it is going to be for portable play, because it's considerably heftier than the Switch, which is already a machine some people find too uncomfortable for portable play. I mean, it's twice the weight. That's substantial. It's also massive. The idea of carting that thing around, it just, I don't know, it feels kind of like, it's like a weird halfway house between a Switch and a gaming laptop, which I don't have a huge amount of affection for because they're also quite hefty. The few that I've seen kind of Catherine, test for reviews and stuff, they're always these massive, great kind of industrial things covered in vents. They get incredibly hot. I have basic questions about how this thing functions on that level. Is it going to be boiling hot like a PC, or is it going to be quite smooth and painless like a Switch? I mean, the other thing, and this is maybe a deeper level of what you want this for. The games that I play on PC and that I really like on PC are the shiniest versions of the most cutting edge games. The big graphic beasts, which these days we have the PC plugged into a TV. I like to play in big. There is always a question of what games scale onto a smaller screen. I know people will say, people like Breath of the Wild on Switch portable, and that's fine, and absolutely. But at the same time, that is not the optimal place. I've always felt that there's a big misunderstanding of handheld gaming, that what people want is just the home console experience. This is kind of what fucked Sony with the Vita.
Yeah, big time.
When Nintendo DS was doing quite bespoke handheld games for the DS, Sony kept coming out with like, it's a Vita, but it plays Uncharted. It's like, no one wants to play Uncharted on a screen the size of a stamp. That isn't the appeal of Uncharted. That is a big TV experience. And the idea of like, yes, this can play your Controls, or this can play your Jedi Fallen Orders or whatever. Fine, fair, whatever. But like, that isn't necessarily what I want, what I want to be doing. So like, it maybe makes more sense to me as this kind of indie machine. And that will also get it round the kind of the limitations with those shinier games. 'Cause it feels like, there is going to be a natural cap of like what it can do. Like, how does this thing handle like Red Dead Redemption 2, for example? Things which are reasonably beast-like.
But
yeah, I don't know. I just
like I know you're kind of focusing on the portability of it, but what about just? I mean, in the same way that Switch, it's a hybrid console. Like the Steam Deck, it does seem like the fact that you could. Like, let's say you have your desktop down in the bottom room and it's a pain to drag that up into the front room and plug in the telly, whereas with the Steam Deck...
But this is not powerful enough to play, like, things how you want to see them on a big TV, is the vibe I get from it. Like, sure, if you want to play those games at this, like, very low resolution at medium settings in your big TV, I don't know, that isn't what I want from PC gaming. On a monitor up level, that feels to me.
How often do you play your Switch on the TV, or is it exclusively a handheld machine for you?
No, about half and half, and it really depends on the game. Like Zelda and Mario, I play more on the TV, but those are games which have been made with that power of that console specifically in mind to make it look as good as it can on the TV. There is a big difference between playing that and like the idea, like, well, you don't need an Xbox because this can also play Control on it. But like, I just want to see it. That's all I'm saying is I want to see what Control looks like when this thing's plugged into a TV, because it feels like it's designed to play it on that tiny screen at 720p. I think it's just a bit misleading to talk about this like, oh, you can just plug, it's a desktop PC as well. It's like, yes, technically true. But, how compromised,
Yep, and it is something that we will...
like, that it is this open platform, yes, important to PC gamers. For me personally, not so much. Like, the thing I like about... The reason I am more into PC gaming now than I used to be is that Steam has turned it into more of a console experience. The launchers have turned PC into more of a console experience. Like, the more the PC behaves and looks like a console, the better for me. So this on paper, the idea of like freedom and the idea of being able to meddle and take things off it and install other things, that doesn't speak to me. Maybe it speaks to other people who'll have a better idea of like what those specs in it. Maybe this will become like the ultimate emulation machine, because you can just shove any old shit on it and,
probably.
And it'll be a dream from that level. But I don't know, like, I'm reasonably conservative in like how I play my games and how I use my PC. So that stuff, like, it's just not a selling point to me. Like, I like, if anything, console, handheld hardware, part of the appeal for me has been that it's just kind of neat and tidy and it does a thing and you know what it does. And it's not like the appeal is that it's locked down. The appeal is this is simple and I don't have to worry. But it sounds like out of the box, this is too, and you'd have to go out of your way to like meddle with that. But I don't.
Well, before we move on from the Steam Deck, Matthew, we have a bonus early burning question. So, we won't burn the man too much because he's going to get a doing later on. From Ryan, Ryan says, Steam Deck seems huge to me. PC gaming is now mobile gaming. Supposing Steam gets its wish by creating a new product category here that other hardware makers emulate, what do you think the knock-on effects throughout the PC gaming hobby will be? How might software developers respond? Now, I know you've sort of said this a little bit already, even in terms of like just the fact that will developers take Steam Deck into consideration when developing their Steam games? Like you said, just even the size of text or I don't know, menus or I don't know, anything like that. Like how?
I think it probably adds to a lot of people's workloads. I think you have some developers who already take great pride in, like, they want their game to sort of like absolutely like shine on it. You know, they leap at the chance to adapt to new technology. Like, for example, Larian, went full in on like Stadia, as well as PC, and have made sure it's as good and as they've really respected that platform, and they've kind of they treat it as kind of carefully as they would anything. And if everyone was like Larian, I'd feel like great. We are in for exciting times. But there are some bigger teams who already treat PC like a bit of a second-class citizen. Like, they just ship it, farm out their ports and get all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And you have teams that are too small to be taking into consideration, we've got to like adapt to yet another thing. It's strange to kind of split things up so much. In terms of like whether we think this is going to like trigger a wave of similar machine, because I guess, part of it being open is it's a bit like when they did the, what are those called? Like Steam machines, which was like more of a kind of hardware like concept rather than like a set thing. It's like, will this kind of trigger a wave of like other manufacturers making things in this space, knowing that there is now an appetite for it? Like, I guess the question is like whether they can, it's got to be expensive. I guess they'll wait to see if this takes off. I could see that being a thing, but like, I think you'd be a bit mad jumping into that, very, very expensive hardware market.
I appreciate that, like, the Steam crashed on when the pre-orders went live, and it does seem like this thing, there's a lot of buzz around it. It's on everyone's lips, Steam Deck.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that there are people maybe with some concerns, or you or I, that would like. I'd like to hold. I'm relatively excited by the idea of a Steam Deck, but I'd like to hold it first. How cumbersome is it? It looks quite weighty. I don't know.
Yeah, those are my big questions. I know it sounds like I'm down on it. It's not. It's more of a tempered reaction to just having a lot of people just blindly shrieking at me on Twitter over the weekend about how this is like, you must feel your Switch is really fucked now. And you're like, no, not really, not at all. Like, this thing, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't really exist until we kind of got it. There's so many unanswered questions. If anything, a lifetime of playing Nintendo handhelds has set me with an incredibly high bar for what I expect from like the comfort of using a handheld. And I kind of won't accept anything less. So it's got to wait and see, really.
Indeed.
What a boring fence sitter of an opinion.
Oh, well, I feel like to doom the Steam Deck or praise it to high heavens would probably be a bit misguided right now. But
yeah, I feel like people are talking about it like there's a big loophole now exists, and they're going to get a machine which they're like, well, listen, it's cheaper than a next-gen console. It's better than everything else in the world. It literally does everything. It's like, we're going to get a PC for 350 quid. And you're like, you're not. That isn't what this is. Like this idea that like...
you are getting a PC...
Not an equivalent. People are like,
I
want to be one of them next gen suckers. Like, check this out.
Oh no, because even as I just said, like an Xbox Series X and a PlayStation 5 are more like, if you're in this game for power, they're more powerful than a Steam Deck.
And aren't PC gamers in this game for power? they have been up until now. You can't suddenly change track and go, well, actually, no, we're all about usability and flexibility and blah, blah, blah. It's like, fuck off. For all these years, you've been lording it over everyone with power. We've been lording it over everyone with power. To suddenly go like, oh, we're actually about something else now. Nah, I don't buy it.
It has been a quite a, I don't know, a fractious kind of, because it's either people saying that the Switch is doomed, or the Steam Deck, like other people counting down the days of the Steam Deck from the Switch side already, and it's like, gang, calm down. Like, they can live. They are competitors because they're both handheld consoles. To say otherwise would be very silly, but they can live alongside each other.
I've just spent too much of the weekend being riled up by like really dumb hot takes, and I know I've got dumb hot takes of my own on this topic, but they're purely reactionary to the dumb hot takes I've read. I mean, oh man, there was. I won't name names, but I read some embarrassing stuff over the weekend that I fully intend to rub in people's faces when the thing comes out and some of the realities of it come to light.
I'm looking forward to it. Matthew, I think we've got everything out of the Steam Deck that we possibly could.
Did you order one?
I didn't, mainly because I forgot. I forgot when the pre-order, and I was like, oh yeah. I was like, but at the same time, I don't know. I wasn't like, oh no. I was like, oh okay. Maybe I'll get one.
I tried and the systems like went nuts, and then thought I was trying to spam it, even though I sat there patiently with one order, and then it was like, oh, you've tried to do too many orders. And it's like, well, I've tried to do one order, so that's bullshit. And I know that will now recast the last 20 minutes as just a bitter man who wasn't able to pre-order a Steam Deck is trying to convince himself that he didn't want a Steam Deck. There's maybe 20% truth in that. If only I had some wild bills to help me cool off.
They only paid us for the one, Ed, Matthew. How do I make the shift here? Steam Deck, an open PC platform that you can tinker with and, just do whatever you like. Maybe you'd like to watch some films and television shows on there, like what you can do on that there Netflix, but also maybe you can tinker with it to watch films, but then also play games on Netflix. Now, for those watching...
What a segue.
For those watching, you're just seeing footage of The Witcher 3 because I'm afraid of Netflix and showing Bandersnatch and them coming for us with their entire legal team. But that aside, don't worry, we can defend ourselves with all that wild bill money. Matthew. So Bloomberg, and not our old pal Jason, they reported last week that Netflix are going to be giving video games a go. They hired Mike Verdu, who was formerly of EA and Oculus. They've hired him as the Vice President of Game Development, which implies that they're not just going to be throwing money at Phil Spencer or whatever and saying, get Halo Infinite on here. It implies that they're going to be making games themselves. Bloomberg's report said, quote, the idea is to offer video games on Netflix's streaming platform within the next year. This is a quote from Bloomberg's report, not attributed to any Netflix head. Right. It goes on, the games will appear alongside current fare as a new programming genre. The company doesn't currently plan to charge extra for the content, end quote. Now, Netflix, still the kings of OTT in America, but they also they gained fewer subscribers in the last quarter than what they had forecasted. Over the weekend as well, a data miner called Steve Moser dug into the Netflix iOS app, I think it was, and he claims that there are images of both a DualSense controller and, heaven forbid, Ghost of Tsushima. Now, yeah, all this very sort of, who knows what's going to happen here. Would the idea of a Netflix coming in and, having a go at this streaming video games to people, like, 'cause when you look at this space, Game Pass sells itself as, well, it doesn't officially, but, people who evangelize Game Pass sell it as like the Netflix of video games, but it's not, because you download the games and then you play them from there. I know they've recently had the xCloud streaming stuff. But I don't know. Do you think that this is hot air and similar to Amazon or Google with Stadia? This is just another big company going, a lot of money in them there hills, and kind of going, will we give it a go?
They've got to be looking a little bit at the old money stuffed hills. But I don't know. I mean, like, obviously, until we know the exact nature of what this is, it's hard to say. It sounds like, as a streaming thing, as like another string to their bow, the closest thing is the cloud gaming with Xbox, the cloud streaming, whatever they call it, xCloud.
So it was xCloud previously. I think it's just called Xbox Game Streaming or something. Anyway, but that thing.
She kept it xCloud.
Yeah,
it's a
I like
sign
xCloud.
that I will always think of it as xCloud. That it had a name, which was fine. But there, like, I don't think streaming's still at a place where it would ever be my like primary way to play games. But like, I have dabbled a little bit with the Xbox One because it's included in something that, because I have access to it, because I sort of own it without sort of meaning to, really. It's part of my general subscription bundle. And that for me kind of feels like a sweet spot for game streaming to exist. It's when you have to go out of your way and you're like, do you want to pay money for just this thing? You're like, nah. But if you already own it, say as part of a Netflix subscription, and your costs don't go up because of that, you might be like, sure, I'll give it a go. And if it's good enough, maybe that turns into a longer relationship. I think if it's going to like bleed into people's lives at all, it has to be that way. It's too much of a leap going, do you want to pay X for any kind of inferior way of consuming games? Because it is an inferior way currently. Yeah. And Xbox have the right idea. The reason like PlayStation, wrong idea. They want you to buy PlayStation Now. If PlayStation Now was bundled in PS Plus, again, I might try it once in a while, but I'm not going to buy it by itself.
Like, I'd imagine this push from Netflix to get into games, it must be spurred on a little bit by the success that they've had with Henry Cavill's The Witcher, because they've even, like we said, it was that last week or the week before, there is an upcoming version of The Witcher 3 that includes some content from the TV show. So,
and like, you can see it in their mind. You'll finish the next series of The Witcher, and instead of loading up, whatever shit sitcom they've made with Ashton Kutcher, it'll say, hey, why don't you play The Witcher? Press this button. And you press that button, and lo and behold, you're playing The Witcher. And that will work. I mean, like, everyone, and to say that Netflix uses a tech savvy is mad. It feels so ubiquitous now that, like, the Venn diagram of people who play games and people who watch Netflix, I mean, it's practically an eclipse. So the idea of just saying, it makes perfect sense on paper. I think they've been much wiser getting other people's games. I think, the thing we've seen recently that's been a bad idea is when people try and set themselves up as a big game studio. This idea of like, well, basically the Amazon approach of just pumping money into it, because as we've talked about way back when we were talking about the Amazon studios kind of struggling, like, you can't buy studio culture. It takes a long time to develop over the years. It's very, very hard just to get these things up and running. So the idea of like, if it has Ghost of Tsushima, great idea. That's much better. Like, get some stuff that is already popular and people like, fold it in. They've got tons and tons of money. Imagine they can easily, like, make it worth your while to put it on this streaming service.
Well, and these streaming services, they're looking for watch time. Like, they want you to kind of like stay on the platform for as long as possible. And like, what better way than to have these tens of hours of RPGs?
And that's what I know. We're talking about the Xbox, subscription thing on here a lot, but the hours of stuff I do get out of that single price, it makes it very appealing. Like, I am constantly evaluating all my subscriptions and what I can drop in any given month. And that one's just stayed there ticking away because it kind of earns its place time-wise quite comfortably. I'm intrigued to see like what the kind of controller element of this is, because like if this is like Netflix on TV, how does that,
So do you think that we are talking The Witcher here? And I know that most, like,
say for example,
rather than like just more gamey Telltale, basically, like, the way they did Bandersnatch.
It could be that kind of stuff which you can, in theory, you could control with it. But TV remote, that's what I'm interested in. It's like, if it's through a console, fine, you've got a controller plugged in. That isn't too hard to imagine. Even if it's through an Apple TV, say you can Bluetooth the controller. Can you Bluetooth controllers to just TVs?
It depends on the TV, I believe.
I don't know. It gets a bit murkier there. On PC, I mean, like, I find with a lot of these things that the challenge is, like, if you have to do it at PC, you may as well just play the PC version of the games. I feel like that seems sort of daft to me. If there's a way of, like, this feels like it's more valuable if you could just make it work on a TV. But they're not really built for that. I don't know. It's interesting, isn't it?
I mean, it depends on the, like, what games they get, and because I know you said, like, why not just play it on PC? And it's like, well, if it's included in my Netflix subscription and to buy it on Steam would be 30 quid or whatever, it's like, give it a go on Netflix.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
A lot of that depends then on the tech, how it runs.
But the benefit of being on Netflix, like, I don't know how many people are like, oh, I'll go and have a Netflix session on my PC. I'll sit in my PC and watch Netflix. Maybe people do. I definitely don't. So the idea of like the dream situation, it feels like, is a TV or film watch sort of accidentally becomes a gaming session, right? Mm-hmm. That's the transition they want, and that wouldn't happen on like a lot of things, because on PC you're not like, oh, I think I'll watch some TV and then see what happens. That isn't, and likewise if you're doing it on a phone or whatever and you're out and about, I don't see you sitting on a train and you're like, yeah, I will play an RPG. I just don't really see that. But on a TV I could, if you can transition into a console like experience, I mean, that would be quite cool, actually. I'd be down for that.
But I mean, we probably won't see the result of any of this Netflix stuff, especially for quite a while.
If they enter the TV space and then they're like, hey, games journalists, do you want a free Netflix account so you can test it? I'd be like, I certainly would.
And our final news story today, E3 is back, baby. Matthew, it is it's the final big summer event of...
It's like, who's that guy? Who's the guy from the Halloween films, just when you think he's dead?
Michael Myers.
Yeah, he jumps back up again. It's that.
So
E3 is the Michael Myers of...
EA Play Live is happening this Thursday, and I was just wondering, Matthew, if you had any juicy predictions for me. It begins at 6 p.m. It's the pre-show. It's presented by Xavier Woods, better known, of course, as Total Non-Stop Action professional wrestler, Consequences Creed. They have said that there is going to be no BioWare, no Star Wars, no Skate 4, although apparently, again, by the time you're listening / watching this, some Skate 4 news will have happened, because that's happening on Monday. Mm-hmm. It hasn't happened by time of recording. Anyway, so they've mentioned, I believe, Battlefield 2042, Apex Legends, and Lost in Random, which is that EA Originals game, which they revealed, I think, 12 months ago, if you remember.
Yeah, that's a sort of Tim Burton-y thing, right?
Yes. But what else? Like, because if they've said no BioWare, no Star Wars, no Skate, like, are they going to do a half an hour of Dead Space?
I don't know. This feels like it's just going to be a huge bust, because they've basically come out and said all the things you're interested in aren't going to be there. So either they've really sat on some big surprises, or it's just going to be, here's a bit of new FIFA, here's a bit of this Dead Space thing, which now everyone sort of knows about. I know, like, I am excited to see this Dead Space game for sure. Like, super intrigued as to how it actually looks, but like of their existing franchises, I don't really care. I don't care enough about any of them to want to. The ones I do like, Mass Effect and Dragon Age, are like no. So I don't know. Need for Speed. Does anyone care about Need for Speed?
A new Need for Speed game, a Sims 5, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, Sims 5 would obviously be a massive thing, but is there any inkling of that?
Other than the fact that The Sims 4 was released a decent time ago. But
yeah, but then they put out like, here's a DLC of like 3 new pairs of jeans, and it makes like £8 million.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like. This is either going to be a total bust or like a hugely pleasant surprise. I don't think there's any middle ground with this one.
Like, I was looking through like what series from EA's past could turn up, and it's like I don't really, apart from the ones we just mentioned there, like, and some of them are long shots. I'm like, I don't really know. Like,
time for Unravel 3.
Oh, Jesus wept. Hopefully not.
Yanni's Revenge.
But we'll see. Oh, that's the kind of Unravel I'd be interested in.
Crawling out of the toxic waste. I'm here to unravel your mind.
So those are your headlines and hot takes for this week. A meaty one. So we are going to take a very quick break, and then we will be back after that with the video games that we've been playing over the last 7 days.
If you love online shooters, you should listen to Ultimate Audio Bang, Rock Paper Shotgun's fortnightly podcast. Every second Friday, I, Ed Thorne,
and I, Imogen Beck-Helling, chat about the latest news in Shooterland. We go in depth on Apex, Warzone, and more in our weekly talking points.
And we also tell you about the silly player names we come across.
I once played Valorant with Joey Tribbiani.
Subscribe to Ultimate Audio Bang on your preferred podcasting app, or listen to us every second Friday on rockpapershotgun.com.
Show and tell, show and tell. We can't afford a proper jingle. It's meant to be jingle.
Yes, Show and Tell is part of the PC Gaming Weekspot, where we take you through the video games that we've been playing over the last 7 days. The video game I have been playing is from Acid Nerve, the people who brought you Titan Souls. And, what a video game. I've been playing Death's Door. So, this is an isometric action adventure. It's a game that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I say that because I suppose I will say it's not linear. I'll talk about that in a moment. But I wanted to hammer home the fact that this isn't a roguelite/roguelike with procedurally generated worlds. It's all handcrafted. For some reason, it appears that some people think that this is roguish. So I guess
because if you were to glimpse it, you might think, it's like a Hades type thing.
Maybe. So like, if you're one of the people that thinks that, then don't, because
you're
it's
wrong,
not.
you idiot.
So how this actually does work, generally speaking, you go into a world that's made up of 3 or 4 connected levels. Hacking and slashing at all the baddies and solving puzzles and exploring areas for secrets. And this often all leads up to these big and challenging boss battles. In fact, the 2 games that Death's Door most resembles are Dark Souls and The Legend of Zelda.
That's what everyone says about every game.
Well, I'll give you, reasonings why these resemble these, right? So like Dark Souls, it has these humongous bosses that at first seem unbeatable, but you figure out their tells and you get used to them. When you kill enemies, you get their souls, and then you use that currency to upgrade your strength, your speed, etc.
Okay, that is quite Dark Souls, he says begrudgingly.
And each level, I shouldn't say each level, but a lot of the levels, you pick away at them, opening doors and revealing passageways that will often loop you back around to the beginning, so that when you die, you can take the shorter route to get to where you need to get to. Do you follow? Now, when it comes to Zelda, like I suppose you could say a lot of these dungeon-like levels, or there are a lot of dungeon-like levels, and you acquire abilities at the end of them by game's end, and these will complement your weapon in combat, but they're also pivotal for when it comes to solving environmental puzzles.
Right.
So like you have a fireball, and that's necessary to light these large lanterns that are scattered about the place. Light a few and you'll reveal a secret door or whatever. There's also your bomb that will just annihilate your enemies, but it's also handy for breaking down these weak walls. You have a grappling hook.
Classic bomb behavior.
You have a grappling hook that you can fling yourself towards enemies, but also to reach platforms. And you also have a crossbow, which is good for firing through the eyes of enemies, but also for flicking on switches from afar. And to go into the combat a little more, like, it is good. Like it's pretty straightforward. You have your melee weapon, 5 in total to collect, and they all have different characteristics. And you have those ranged abilities that I mentioned. But the thing is that there's a great balance at play here. You can't just spam these abilities and they don't have a cooldown. So how it works, unless you upgrade your ranged abilities through these, again, Zelda, these shrines that you find. There are also health shrines as well to bump up your health bar. But your ranged abilities work off this sort of 4 charges, 4 pips that you can see in the top left of the screen. So let's say you use the crossbow 4 times. Then your ranged ability bar will be totally empty. But you can then refill that by hitting enemies or other objects in the environment 4 times with the melee attack. So because of that, you're constantly... You're going back and forth between melee and ranged. It is a terrific balance of... Because, like, say, for example, like some of these bosses I've mentioned, and I'll go into them again in a while, but like there's absolutely massive bastards. And you're like, well, I'm going to keep my distance. I'm going to pop them with a few bombs from afar, but you can't. You have to get in the thick of it to refill your bomb bar and then, pull back, fling a couple of bombs at them. And getting into that groove, that fluidity is an absolute joy. I think it is balanced wonderfully.
Yeah, it looks great. I can definitely see the sort of Zelda-ness in like some of the boss fighty stuff I think you've shown.
He's coming around now, I see.
No, it's good. That's good. When they showed the trailer for this with the more action earlier in E3, I thought, oh, actually, this does look like my jam.
I mean, I suppose I'm talking about how your abilities don't recharge. So now is as good a time to bring this up. Nothing regenerates in Death's Door, and that does include your health as well.
Right.
So how this works, to replenish your health, you have to first find a seed that is scattered about the place, and then you plant that in one of the pots that are also relatively plentiful. And then when you interact with that, you have full health. Now, if you like, you can travel back to the hub area. There is a hub area. I'll talk about that in a second. And then you can travel back to the level, and that will also give you full health. But then that will also respawn all the enemies that you've killed. So it is this dangerous game to play, but one that I often did. Because when I ended the game, I ended it with like 12 or 13 surplus seeds, which I probably wasn't meant to. But I guess that depends on how you play.
That's because you're such a pro.
Yeah, let's go with that. But I think that this is a very nice idea. I think it probably could have actually been more severe to have a bit more of an impact. But I don't know. Maybe I am just a pro, as Matthew said. But I've kind of spoken about the combat, but I haven't actually mentioned the enemies because there are complexities there as well. Combat, relatively straightforward. There are, kind of the balance of ranged and melee, but the enemies as well also introduce complexities like the more hulking ones. They require a sort of a stick and move. There are other enemies that shoot out projectiles that you then yourself can deflect back at them.
Yeah, that's classic Zelda, lightning tennis.
Or back at other enemies that are in the area as well. And there are like environmental hazards that you can use to your advantage. So picking away at these enemies and recognizing tells and learning what projectiles are deflectable, because not all of them are. Oh, Matthew, what a thrill. Like every new baddie is its own puzzle to an extent. Some more challenging than others, of course, like the bosses, but I'm trying to shy away from explaining them too much because...
Yeah. Leave some surprises.
Like each boss will... Like, I suppose, you know, again, the comparison with maybe Souls, like each boss between the jigs and the reels will take you about 3 to 5 minutes to kill once you actually, in that run that you kill them. But getting to that point, or getting to that like level of skill or level of just power, I suppose, upgrading your character, like that's where it becomes a bit tougher. Like this is a challenging game and it definitely makes you work to succeed. But like when you do, oh, it is so satisfying. It really, really is. So to put the combat to one side, I mentioned the exploration, how levels open up. There's a decent amount of puzzling here and lever pulling and switch pressing and etc. etc. So I wouldn't call this a Metroidvania. Like it's not like when you get these new abilities in one level, you're then stomping over to a previously locked door within that level. That's a bit more of a rarity. Right. Where the exploration comes into play and these newly acquired abilities, so you can travel back to levels that you had previously visited with these new abilities, and you can open up previously locked pathways. So like I mentioned, the bomb ability, like I think you get that in the second world. And then you can go back to the first world and you can smash in some of those weak walls. And when you do, you might find one of those soul orbs or a seed or whatever it is. So it's not so much about progressing through levels. It's about uncovering secrets in areas that you had once been. And again, it depends on your playstyle, but I loved going back to the areas I had been and kind of poking and prodding and figuring out what I had missed the first time around. Like, one thing actually, and I'm not trying to make it sound unimaginative or grindy, I suppose. Like, I just love spotting areas of interest and making note of them for the future. Like, it just... Because it's often that you come across a wall and you're like, right, can't get in there now, but just, I'm going to kind of take a mental picture of where that was and I'll come back to it. And that ties into the visuals a bit as well, or something that I wanted to mention about the visuals, because it's a very pretty game. Anyway, like the enemy design and in particular the boss design, it straddles this fine line between kind of cute, not cute, kind of cartoony, I suppose, and just a bit grotesque in some and some designs. But there are some great little touches here as well, like a great reflection and lighting in these buffed tiled floors in one area, and say the brightness of the ground in an outdoor area changing because of like the clouds moving overhead. Like it's a game that really relishes in those little details, probably because, you know, it doesn't, it's not like you're getting photorealistic Chris Pratt or whatever here. It doesn't, you know, it's a cartoon realistic Crow,
that isn't
which is
essential
much
for
nicer.
entertainment in a video game.
And the way shots are framed as well is really marvelous. Like you could be walking along this massive bridge, camera will pan out and your little crow will become smaller. And what this is, like, yeah, of course it's showing you a sense of scale, but it's also showing you little secrets in other areas, because you might see a little shimmering thing in a platform underneath. It just, again, this game is constantly urging you to interact with its systems, be that in combat or in exploration. And it is marvelous at doing it. Now, I suppose I haven't given you a reason for poking and prodding or going around this world. Like, this crow that you play as, you're essentially a Grim Reaper, but in this world there are loads of Grim Reapers. And you work at this place called the Hall of Doors. And these doors are gateways to different areas just in life, in the world. Your job is to enter a door, kill a creature who needs to be killed, and then go back to the hall and collect your paycheck and head away home. But your first job, obviously enough, doesn't go to plan, and you end up working with this grittier, kind of Clint Eastwood looking crow. He asks you to take down 3 bosses, and then you crack on from there. But one thing this game does when it comes to the bosses, or just when it comes to the whole thing actually, is it respects the idea of death by like it makes fun of death, but also it's quite somber at points as well. So like the melancholy will come when you defeat bosses, because like rather than move on after you defeat one of the big bads, you're sort of witness to this little remembrance ceremony where a person called Steadhone, they have a headstone on their head, they act as the celebrant, and they say a few words about how this person was troubled or whatever, or they might even be like, yeah, they weren't great, but they're still dead. So it has this air of respect and reverence for death, but it's also quite funny at times. Like even when you die, and I've gone back and forth or gone back to Zelda and Souls a lot here, but when you die, death pops up on screen, and you hear this sort of more melodic Inception-like horn kind of thing. And I don't know why, but it tickled me quite a bit.
I love the Inception horn.
It was just like, I don't know, it's quite funny just seeing like death pop up on screen, and you see it again and again and again, because it is quite hard. But it's playful and silly in its humour as well. Like I mentioned that Steadhone character, but there's another character you meet that has a pot on their head, and his name, Matthew, is...
Pothead.
Brian. No, yeah, Pothead. Of course it is Pothead. Or there's a bit where you're being read the riot act by a guard when a large frog drops from the sky and swallows said guard up its asshole. And like, I don't just want to rattle off all the gags, but there's a character called Forest Mother that sends you out to look for her missing wind instrument. And when you find it, a box pops up on screen and it says, "You got the horn. Mother will be pleased." And she was. So it's this game that's set in a fantastical world, but it grounds itself superbly in its like respect for death, and which is something I suppose you don't see an awful lot in games. But also it's like slapstick and charming, kind of even at times like cringy humor. It's a lovely, lovely mix. Now I suppose some not great things. Like it's not all perfect, but. I did mention about grinding earlier. Like I did have to grind a little, not loads, but I found an area where there were tons of spiders, and I kept going back occasionally if I wanted to get up to upgrade my character. Later on in the game, when you have the 4 magic ranged abilities, you have to switch between them using the D-pad, but also the combat is quite frantic, so you're trying to move your character with the left analog stick. That just gets a little fiddly. You controlling the ranged abilities with the movement of the crow later on when you're in a more frantic combat arena. And while the opening up of worlds is often communicated well, and kind of soulsy backtracking kind of stuff, there were definitely 1 or 2 occasions where I got a little lost. Like you don't have a map or anything here. Right. The second forestry area being one. Maybe it was just me, I don't know, but yeah, it didn't happen a ludicrous amount. But anyway, Matthew, like despite those few little quibbles, I loved this game. I didn't 100% it. Yeah, like I didn't 100% it, but I upgraded 3 of my 4 weapons. I grabbed a decent chunk of the collectibles. My crow was like super crow by the conclusion. I just lapped it up. I think it's brilliant. I think you should play it. I think the people at home should play it. It's, again, not a roguelike. It's an action adventure, Souls-y, Zelda-y type thing. Yeah, great time for this.
Nice.
So yeah, Death's Door. Play
Door.
it. It's cracking game. Matthew, you haven't played Death's Door. You instead have been playing a different computer game. Do tell me and the people at home what you have been playing.
I've been playing Cris Tales, which is a JRPG RPG from a Colombian studio, a CRPG, I guess, called Dreams Uncorporated / they're either Psych or Sick. S1CK. This one's been on the sort of radar for a while. I think it got shown off a couple of years ago at E3. Its kind of big sort of gimmick is it's an RPG where you play as this character called Crispell, who is a time mage and can sort of exist in she exists in the present, but she sort of when you're walking around, the sort of screen's split into this sort of cone formation where the center is the present, and then on the left is the past, and on the right is the future. And it's almost like a sort of windows into 3 different time frames. So as you walk around, you can kind of sort of see areas from a different perspective. So here, for example, there's this town and then you can jump fully into the future or the past as this frog. To sort of solve puzzles or kind of manipulate the world. So, in this particular one, the frog is jumping into the future to learn what happened to the people in this town so that in the present you can, help them to avoid like a fate.
Oh.
So like if in the future they're like, our boy died because of this, you then know to give him an antidote in the present, and that means he'll be alive in the future. So you're basically trying to sort of save the future by sort of meddling with the past, present. Is the basic story setup, and gives it a nice sort of set of kind of like time, kind of sort of Ocarina of Timey kind of puzzles where planting seeds in the past makes trees grow in the present and all this kind of stuff. I should say I've only played about 5 hours of this, of what's meant to be like a 30-40 hour JRPG. So, I've not gone like massively deep into it, but that's the vibe of it seems to be in these sort of like more built up town areas. You do this time hopping and then you kind of explore the overworld more in the present, which is a kind of more traditional mix of walking around, random battle encounters. But what's kind of interesting is that the time powers also come into play in the battles.
I was just about to ask, how does that work?
So in the battles, you can send enemies on the left half of the screen into the past, and you can send enemies on the right side of the screen into the future, and then you can remove those time travels so they kind of return to the present. So, for example, a very basic thing is that if there's a big scary wolf, on the left side of the screen, if you send it into the past, it becomes a younger wolf and is less of a threat. That doesn't always work out because sometimes an old enemy, you can age them into like middle age where they're actually more efficient. Or there's soldiers, if you put them into the future, they've like trained and they like level up and become like super armored and muscly because they're like older, experienced soldiers. So there's part of it is like knowing which enemies are best put in different periods. But it also plays with a lot of like elemental magics that you have. So for example, if in the present you splash someone with a water spell, it obviously hurts them, but it also douses them so they're wet. If you then put them into the future, that rusts them and like breaks their armor because you fast forwarded the thing. Likewise, if you poison someone and then put them into the future, it like all the poison they would have accumulated over several turns happens at once. So there's some sort of quite fun interplay about like what does what in what time period. One of the character classes is all based on like plot. He can attack people with just common magics, or he can kind of plant a seed, which if you then manipulate that with time in battle can grow for like sort of bigger results. So you can plant like a poison plant in the past, then remove the past crystal so it's present day. That plant grows and it like sprays out poison, which poisons everyone at once on that side. So yeah, it's quite like a little bit gimmicky, but it's very nicely done, and there seems to be like quite a smooth progression of new ideas, which is good. It reminds me more of like like Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi RPGs, if you've played those on Nintendo, rather than say a straight Final Fantasy, in that there is like a puzzle element to it. It's quite arcadey as well. Like attacks can be bolstered by tapping a button just as you hit. Likewise, you can defend by tapping a button just as you hit, which is a very like Paper Mario thing. So that stuff's fun. I always think it feels like you have to be like super engaged and really keep an eye on things. I say the only downside to that, and this also goes for the Mario games if you have ever played those, is that when you are like walking around just the overworld or the other maps where you have like random enemy encounters, you can't ever just grind away. Like it feels like you always have to be kind of paying attention because there is that extra element of like defense and attack. It does mean that in levels where the enemy encounter rate is maybe a little high, it does get a little like wearying. You can't just phone it in and go, I'll just tap A and get through these battles. Like you have to kind of invest in every battle, no matter how unimportant it is, which is just a flaw of this approach, but it always has been. And I think it's generally balanced out by, the fun of the meeting enemies for the first time. And the boss battles have got a lot of like quite fun gimmicks. Like they're more about working out how to like wound them with the time tricks or how to sort of expose their weak point, again, using the time manipulation.
That time manipulation does sound like, it does sound good, like trying to figure out how different elemental effects would affect the baddies in battle. But you said it's a bit gimmicky after a while, is it?
Well, no, only in those areas where you've got like the random encounters with the same enemy type, because after a while you're like, I know how to sort of deal with these people, or I've got the trick that works, and it feels like I'm just having to do this trick over and over again. But then you hit a boss battle which mixes it up, or there's a new combination of enemies, or like a new enemy type will come in. In the few hours I played, there were a couple of areas where I was like, I feel like it's making me solve this sort of combat puzzle again and again. Yeah. Rather than I can't just phone it in. I can't just sit back and like let auto battle do the trick. There isn't an auto battle function. Feels like you have to be kind of super engaged. But that also though, that, this is the early stretch of the game. I think there are other characters that get added to your party, and the characters I had, they don't have very exciting powers. It is always the hardest stretch because it's tutorializing, and also you've only got like 2 or 3 moves you can do, so you've got quite a limited set. But even in those 5 hours, I was picking up like a lot more elemental magics and kind of getting my head around what I could do with those, which was fun. And the actual execution of the future and the past, the way that like different enemies have different forms at different time periods is really nicely done, and it's quite fun just to see kind of what it cooks up with that. It's almost a shame that the time window thing does in what I've played seems limited to the major like towns rather than just the overworld. Like you kind of miss the time window mechanic when you're exploring like just sort of the more generic kind of like forests or mountains or whatever. But sort of I enjoyed what there is of that time stuff. Mm-hmm. The only thing that didn't really click with me is quite twee. I didn't really like the writing.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
I did like the art stuff was fine, but I didn't really like the writing. I didn't really like the voice performances. They're very like twee anime kind of. You can do it if you believe in yourself kind of stuff. And
there's a frog with a top hat.
Yeah, he's a knob.
He looks at you.
It's just it's a little bit. This is true of a lot of JRPGs. It's a little bit like twee and on the nose. It's kind of the power of friendship, and every area has this little story arc, which kind of someone learns like an important lesson about themselves. There's the overcoming of the enemy and the overcoming of the kind of the personal challenge. It's not particularly knowing. Like the combat is reasonably, I wouldn't say it's super difficult, but it's like, it's got enough bite that it's not like, I don't think it's aimed at like very young kids or whatever, but I found the actual tone of it quite babyish. Definitely not for me. Like it just, that's what's missing from this for me. I think if it was a bit more knowing, or just had a bit more sharp. I don't want everyone to be like a snark master, but to have like a little bit more kind of edge to it. It's I guess it's true to the world, but that stuff's like just a little limp for my liking. But yeah, otherwise I thought this was pretty neat. I'm definitely going to play more of it. Like I say, I've only played this little chunk at the beginning, but yeah, it felt like it was constantly introducing new stuff and new powers and new twists and new enemies, which is always cool. You know, and they're kind of like I say, I think they say it's like 30 to 40 hours or whatever, which is kind of the sort of sweet spot for these kind of things. You know, it's sort of harder to throw in when you're like, oh, I'm going to be playing this for like 100 hours or whatever. Yeah, it's neat, very, very, yeah, you know, nicely done.
Very good, very good. Cris Tales.
I think that is out today when you're watching this.
Oh, I think actually, I suppose I should have said, Death's Door is out today as you're watching this as well. So, and finally, very, very quickly, I have played another game, or at least some DLC. Some DLC of another game. I have, Matthew, been revisiting Streets of Rage because of the Mr. X Nightmare DLC. So I haven't played tons of it, but what this DLC does is it adds, first of all, 3 characters to the roster: Estelle and Shiva, who are 2 bosses from the main game, and Streets of Rage 2 favourite professional wrestler Max Thunder.
Oh, I see how it is. Turn your back, you get your ass handed to you, and then you join the heroes.
So I would like to play around with the characters a little bit more, but from some little messing about with them, you know, Max plays like he did in Streets of Rage 2. He's the kind of slow, powerful one. Estelle is a sort of a medium-ranged kind of MMA-ish style character, ground and pound. And then Shiva is super agile and also can't use weapons, or doesn't choose to use weapons. When you try pick up a weapon, he just like flings it at in whatever direction he's looking. But apart from those characters, the big addition with this DLC is the survival mode. And it is exactly what you think it is. Basically, you take on baddies from Streets of Rage past in these one-screen arenas. And these arenas aren't just sort of bog standard, like there will be pitfalls, there will be hazards, there will be all the stuff that you would expect. And then when you finish a round, and they're fairly quick, you're presented with a choice of different buffs. So there could be like a golden knife that's very powerful, or there could be a double jump. Some buffs will also have negative effects to counteract their positive effects. So it might be, 20-25% damage increase, but 25% increase on damage taken as well, or something along those lines. A cool thing, and one that I haven't really messed around with all that much, is that playing through this survival mode will also unlock new moves for your characters. So you get far enough with a character, and then you get those new moves, and then that adds a sort of a customizability to these characters that maybe you have absolutely rinsed. I like the idea. Again, I haven't played around with it all that much. And the survival mode, I suppose there are, 12, 13 levels in the base Streets of Rage 4. Mm-hmm. So giving people an opportunity to go back, or a reason to go back, because there are currently, now this only came out last Friday, I think it was, there is like a weekly challenge there as well. So all these challenges, all that will get people to come back to the game, play it more, in theory, I suppose. But from what I played of it, quite enjoyable. And just, nice to dip back into Streets of Rage. I might mess around with these. For
people to rewatch your excellent Streets of Rage video review.
Thank you very much, Matthew.
That's one of the first things you did for RPF.
It was indeed. So those are the games that we've been playing over the last 7 days. So now it is time to test the knowledge of one another in something we like to call Mystery Steam reviews.
It's time for Mystery Steam Reviews. Yeah.
Yes.
I wish he winked at the end of that. Every week I think, why doesn't he wink at the end?
All right. If there's time, I will make him wink next week. But, trying my best.
He'll be a real Frankenstein because it'd be your winking eye in my mouth.
That's all right. I will.
I want every bit of his face to be made by a different member of RPS.
We'll see what we could do. But yes, Mystery Steam Reviews is the part of the PC Gaming Weekspot where I, Colin Mahern, and he, Matthew Castle, test the knowledge of one another via Steam reviews. And that are a mystery. And the rules are as follows. Both I and Matthew bring 3 Steam reviews to the MSR arena, but we omit the name of the game associated with each review. Our opponent must correctly guess the game attached to each review. One correct answer equals 1 point. While both of us have 90 seconds on each MSR, we both also have help in the form of 3 lifelines. These lifelines can be used at any stage during battle and also pause the 90-second timer, but they can only be used once and once only. And they are as follows. Publisher, where the hot seat haver learns the publisher of the game. Second opinion, where a second review is given to the fiery chair sitter. And genre, where the genre of the game is revealed to the one with the warm arse. Now, this week, Matthew, the topic is not overly difficult to explain. It is video games that feature AI-controlled companion characters / video games that feature AI-controlled companion characters for a portion of the game. A decent portion of the game. As we've said before on Mystery Steam Reviews, where somebody would say the title of the game and you would go, oh yes, I remember that portion of the game that had an AI-controlled companion character.
Yeah, in your instructions to this, you said not the Mass Effect companion.
Well, no, because I said not where you choose party members. Like in games like Mass Effect.
Okay, that's the bit I missed, right? Yeah.
So we'll see if that has been taken into account. So games where the game tells you this is your companion character, not where it says you can have 2 on this mission, choose from 6.
I'll tell you what. I've got one. The review is I'm going to say in advance, it's a doozy.
Okay. But yeah, Sully in Uncharted, non-PC examples, or Atreus in God of War.
Yeah.
So can I just ask a question just so everything's above board? Is there any game in your games that has like party members? Or is it all good stuff? We're off to a cracking start.
To the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay. All right.
Where do we stand on an AI companion that someone could control?
Control eventually, I think. Let's see. Let's crack on, because I'm actually also not totally confident in mine now either.
Right.
So Matthew, your first Mystery Steam review
Hit me up.
is as follows, and it's a long one. It's a beefy one. So take this into account. The graphics are outdated. The pathing for NPCs, including your own followers, is broken. The protagonist is spectacularly dull. The voice acting is pitiful. The characters are annoying, and their interactions extremely forced and irksome. The primary threat are laughable in their appearance. They look more like a swarm of clipping polygons than a terrifying horde. The story is inconsistent, fluttering from one vague narrative node to the next, leaving you feeling lost and not really giving a rat's arse. And that's from Dips. It is not recommended. 15.8 hours on record, 7.6 hours at review time. Now it is a beefy one, meaty and beefy at the same time. So Matthew, have you taken everything in?
I think I've absorbed the broad strokes.
All right.
Of this.
So your time starts now.
Okay. So characters are annoying, their interactions are forced, and it's got bad graphics. I feel like this primary threat is key to this. They're laughable. They look like a swarm of flipping polygons and a terrifying horde. They're like a zombie. A game where they look like bad zombies. See, I don't think this is like. I don't think I like a Left 4 Dead counts. That's what I was asking about. Like
Left 4 Dead
controlled.
I would say it doesn't count.
Okay, because so they're not like AI companions, but like a horde of enemies, and you've got an AI companion. It's got to be something that really comes at you big, but it looks dodge. Could be the Ratty game, The Adventures of Rat Girl, whoever it's called. That's a swarm. And there was a rat's arse reference in that as well. That could be a little rat's arse. Plague Tale, Innocence. No, Plague Tale something. Innocence? Beginnings? Innocence.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah, Plague Tale. I think it's called Innocence. They just announced a sequel, so maybe that's the sequel's name.
So, meaty review, but what you took from it was like there must be something in this mention of a horde. They look like clipping polygons, etc., etc. You were thinking of, is it a zombie game? But then you thought, could be rats. There was a mention of a rat's arse at the end of the review as well. So you've ended up on a Plague Tale Innocence. And Matthew Castle, I can tell you that the correct answer is A Plague Tale Innocence. Pull that one out of the bag right at the final whistle. Matthew, could I have my first mystery Steam review, please?
This was clearly a 3 hours campaign that takes 8 to 10 because 2 acts of the campaign just have you driving around an empty giant map the size of Skyrim, going from uninteresting place to uninteresting place. It says Pinhead Larry. They do not recommend it after 29.4 hours, but only 14.1 at the time of review.
Okay, time starts now. Right. A 3 hour campaign, but there's 2 acts that have you driving around giant empty maps. 8 to 10 hours. 2 acts of the campaign that have you driving around very empty spaces, the size of Skyrim according to this person. It's very hard to even riff because I'm not entirely sure. What would help me here? Matthew, I'm going to pause the timer at 45 seconds. Could I use my publisher lifeline, please?
The publisher on this game is Microsoft Game Studios.
45 seconds restarting now. Alright. Halo, Gears, full stop. Does that not kind of fall into, is that a little bit Left 4 Dead-y? This is Gears 5, I think. Because, yes, there are 2 acts in that. The sandy bit and the, I think it was a kind of a snowy bit, where you drive around the skiff and they were very empty. I'm going to say Gears 5.
Is that your final answer?
That is, Chris Tarrant, my final answer.
So, you didn't have any ideas on this? Didn't have any riffs on this? So you went for a lifeline. This gave you Microsoft Game Studios, which you honed in on Halo or Gears of War, both of which arguably have AI companions, literally so in Halo. But is it Gears of War that has levels with an empty giant map the size of Skyrim? Pinhead Larry? I would not trust him on the subject of acreage. To liken Gears 5 to maps the size of Skyrim would be preposterous. But that is not my role as Quizmaster. I'm here to simply reveal the answer. The correct answer is Gears 5. Fucking Pinhead Larry living up to his name there. It's that kind of hyperbole on Steam that it just makes this, like, finding these reviews is so depressing because the bullshit people write where they're like, yeah, it's the size of Skyrim, and you're like, it takes literally 30 seconds to ride across the map in Gears.
It's like, It's not the size of Skyrim.
And there's like a thing here and a thing here, clearly marked. You can only go to these two things. Like, this is the level of person game developers are having to deal with. What a nightmare.
I mean, the big one for me is when somebody gives a negative review and they're like, "What are you doing reading negative reviews? Buy this game." And it's like, you're trying to be funny, but this actually doesn't help.
Never been a funny Steam review. I'm willing to bet everything I have on it.
I think that's fair.
It is. I don't mean to complain about it. I love mystery Steam reviews, but it is the low light of my week is having to read Steam reviews for this.
Right, Matthew, would you like to read? I'll read another Steam review for you. Yeah. This is your second mystery Steam review. Hollywood male goes to Spain and harasses the villagers for a few hours while being stalked by an old man with dirty fingernails. That's from What's the Game Plan, Danny? It is recommended 46.1 hours on record, 22.2 hours at review time. Matthew, your time starts now.
Jesus, what the hell is this? I was going to say, could be Gears of War. Not Gears of War, could be Resident Evil 4. Like, that's Spain. Man with dirty fingernails, there is that kind of Rasputin guy. Rasputin looking guy, anyway. And I guess you have the president's daughter for a bit of it. Bits of it. So that would count as an AI companion. I feel like I just need to make sure of this. Can I have the publisher, please?
You can, pausing the timer at 48 seconds.
If it's Capcom, I'm just going to say Resident Evil 4.
The publisher of this is Capcom.
Resident Evil 4, please, Chris.
Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
Very early, Matthew. Honed in there on Spain. Said Resident Evil 4, that happens in Spain. It also has a companion character, the president's daughter, I believe. Matthew Castle, I can tell you that the correct answer is Resident Evil 4. Sorry, Resident Evil 4. Matthew, could I have my second Mystery Steam review, please?
Would be a nice game if it didn't resound so much anti-Catholic propaganda and myths about the Holy Office. Just for your information, the Catholic Inquisition was way more humanitarian than its Protestant equivalent. Here, the Grand Inquisitor is basically a vampire, says Orimus. I do not recommend it after 13.6 hours.
Time starts now. Well done. That's a very good one. Anti-Catholic propaganda. Right, so anti-Catholic propaganda. What games have anti-Catholic propaganda? Grand Inquisitor is basically a vampire. Now, so I've just given you Resident Evil 4, right? I actually don't know loads about Resident Evil 4 is the problem. But I know there's the little guy. I think there's a guy above him. And I think there is religious iconography or religious nature to it. But again, haven't played it, so
when you
whatever.
say there's the little guy and the big guy above him, do you mean Jesus and God?
If you want, if that lands better. But there's also Assassin's Creed, which has big religious stuff. It could be BioShock Infinite? Alright, what am I doing? I'm gonna pause the timer at 17 seconds. Matthew, could I have my second opinion, please?
Unless you enjoy medieval torture, gore, and children in agony, don't buy it. Predictable boss fights, mediocre storyline.
Right, 17 seconds, restarting the timer now. That kind of has to be Resident Evil 4, doesn't it? Again, this is where my knowledge of Resident Evil 4 isn't helping me. Yeah, let's say they're talking about Ashley, Graham, and the little boy child. Resident Evil 4.
Is that your final answer?
That is my final answer.
So, you're looking for a game with anti-Catholic propaganda and a Grand Inquisitor who's basically a vampire? You're thinking Spain? You're thinking Resident Evil 4? Your clue gave you medieval torture, gore, children in agony. You think Ashley? Maybe a child in agony. Maybe the little boy, a child in agony. Only he's a bad guy, so who really cares how he feels? The correct answer is A Plague Tale: Innocence.
I also haven't played that.
Oh.
I also haven't played that. Oh well.
I'm sorry.
Is there anti-Catholic propaganda in that?
Well, it's sort of it's like you're up against the kind of the Inquisition who are sort of hunting you down, and the big villain is like a bishop who turns into like, I wouldn't say a vampire. He's like the king of rats. He's like a big evil rat king.
All right. Well, I should have.
I just like it really made me laugh that this was like someone really taking umbrage with this. Like, oh no, you know.
That is good. Matthew, for a clean sweep and to win, regardless of what happens in my third one, here is your third and final Mystery Steam review. Andy Serkis, always having some monkey business going on, and that's from Zabata. It is recommended 8.4 hours on record. Matthew, your time starts now.
I mean, surely this has to be the game where Andy Serkis plays a character called Monkey, which is Enslaved: Journey to the West. But then he's also done like Planet of the Apes games where he has played monkeys in those, or apes, or I don't know what it is. Sure. I mean, listen, hit me up with the genre and the second opinion.
Okay, pausing the timer 104.
I imagine if it is Enslaved, the genre would be action adventure, third-person action adventure.
The genre of this video game is an action adventure video game.
Mm-hmm.
And the second opinion is a great Uncharted style action adventure game. Love the story and the characters. Graphics are great, combat is okay, but the controls and platforming are a bit clunky. Some of the boss fights drag on a little too much, but it's forgivable in the grand scheme of things. Will probably take around 7 hours to finish. You can start another new game after finishing with all the abilities you've unlocked, which is rather fun. Rather fun. Restarting the timer now.
I think it's called Journey to the West, or is it Odyssey to the West? It's called Enslaved: Journey to the West, not East. Journey to the West. Enslaved: Journey to the West. If it's called Enslaved: Odyssey of the East, I'm going to be pissed off.
Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
So straight away, you were on the Andy Serkis kind of path. You were like, well, he was involved in that game from, I think it was Bandai Namco, I think.
It's Team Ninja, isn't it?
Or well, like it was Team Ninja who developed it. Or no, it was Ninja Theory. Ninja Theory.
I always get them muddled up.
But he was involved in that. No, there were also a couple of Planet of the Apes games, a few Lord of the Rings games.
Yeah, he didn't play a monkey in Lord of the Rings. He didn't play, like, if you think Gollum was a monkey, you're so fucked.
No.
No. Who's that weird hairless, what's that film about? There's that weird hairless monkey obsessed with the ring.
Yeah, he's I thought Gollum is a chimp. Yeah, that's what I thought.
No. Gollum is not a chimp.
So, you've ended up
monkey falls in the volcano.
Enslaved.
Yeah.
Journey to the West.
Journey to the West.
And I can tell you, Matthew, that the correct answer is Enslaved: Odyssey to the West. But obviously, I'm going to give it... It's the right answer. It's the right answer.
Oh, bless you.
It's the right answer. It's close enough, for God's sake.
Oh, listen, that's fair. Like, I'll be honest, I wouldn't have given that to you. So,
different character of human being. We're two very different people.
Yeah, I mean, who'll last in the dog world of the post-Freedom Day dystopian future? Huh?
Matthew, just because we have to. Matthew, could I have my third and final mystery Steam review? Put me out of my misery, please.
The end levels are unforgiving, though, and most likely you won't have many lives left when you get there, so you spend time playing through the game many times over, learning the mechanics for them, especially the last boss fights. Oh, I didn't change the person on this. This is no mine. It's not Oromes. It's not like Mr. Catholic Inquisition is now like talking about this other game. They recommend it, but it didn't have an hour count, which was odd.
Weird.
Yeah.
Okay, time starts now. No idea. Especially the last boss fights. The end levels are unforgiving, though. You won't have many lives left. Spend time playing through the game, learning the mechanic. Yeah. Ooh, this is a. I don't know what I can take from that. So, pausing the timer 108. Matthew, could I have my genre, please?
It's described as a platform game.
Okay. Restarting the timer now. Oh, God.
Come on. There's some clues in that review. Come on.
The last boss fight.
The last boss fight, and also lives. Come on, think about it.
A platform game.
A platform game with a life counter.
Do you have the review in front of you? Could you read it out to me again, please?
The end levels are unforgiving, and most likely you won't have many lives left when you get there, so you spend time playing the whole game many times over, learning the mechanics.
Sonic? But which Sonic? I mean, 2 was when Tails was introduced. But this could be 2, 3, Mania. I mean, I'll say Sonic Mania purely because it's sort of... I don't know, it's the most recent one, and maybe... and I don't have much time. So let's say Sonic Mania.
Is that your final answer?
That is my final answer.
So, you're right. A bit of a tough review to look at. I think it reveals a certain genre, a certain time frame of games. You've focused in on Sonic the Hedgehog and Tails being the AI companion, and you've chosen Sonic Mania. The correct answer is Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
It was kind of, yeah, either or. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 introduced Tails, so
I think he counts as an AI companion.
Oh, yeah, I would, yeah. Is that what you were talking about at the start?
Well, Gears co-op as well.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I guess, Matthew, you are the best in the world at recognizing companions in video game characters. So, well done, Matthew. Very good. So, let us, meaty show today, so let us try and get through a couple of your burning questions. Yes, burning questions is the part of the PC Gaming Weekspot where we take your correspondence, your burning questions. Then we read them out on the show. You can email us at any stage throughout the week, weekspot@rockpapershotgun.com. So, Matthew, our first bit of correspondence here, our first burning question, comes from Mog, who gave us 30 English pounds.
Whoa!
Super chat on
That'll
the
keep
YouTube.
Me a nice release.
Yeah, in the YouTube premiere. Thank you very much, Mog. You're an absolute star. That's very kind of you. Mog said, now that Cyberpunk 2077 has been given a good bug fixing, what would you like to see in future expansions / DLC? Are you keen to return to the world, or was the main story enough? Great show as always, chaps. Thank you, Mog. I know you probably liked Cyberpunk a little bit more than me, Matthew. I enjoyed it. But I feel like I got my fill of it in those, whatever it was, 25, 30 hours, however long I played. Are you similar? Is there anything that would have you going back?
I thought there were huge chunks of the city that just weren't used for anything. I mean, literally things that looked super interesting. You drive up and look around them and think, wow, this isn't going to be used anywhere. Like the felt the story was focused in a couple of areas of the map too much. My worry, if you've played Cyberpunk, there's obviously a suggestion that its DLC or an expansion might take place in space for various reasons, which is the last place I'd want to be, because that city feels like there was a lot to explore down there. Like the Witcher DLC, Hearts of Stone used basically the same map as Witcher 3, but planted some really, really great side quest stuff in there. I'd love to see that. Of course, they did a whole new area in Blood and Wine as well, which was also amazing. They can do both. But yeah, I felt like I'd seen and I had less reason to explore that city than I did a lot of the Witcher maps. So that's what I'd like.
Yeah, aside from like go back and get those bastards who'd constantly text you going, I've got a car for you. Are you interested? No, I don't want.
That's such it's side content in that game is so bad compared to like the drop off from like the story, the main campaign through line, then like the key story side quests, and then everything else. The gap between that is like, it's just here's 50 gangs of dudes to kill for no reason. Here are like 20 random psychopaths dotted around the map. Here are 20 boring buildings to rob. That game, like the all over the place quality wise.
Big time.
Whatever they do, I hope it's kind of consistent, and I hope it's not just like 100 new gangs are in the city, because who can be fucked with that, right?
And because it's been a long show, we'll take one more here from Blake. Blake says, and this is a follow up from last week's GTA 6 Vice City discussion. Blake says, the most fun part of Vice City was just driving around with the radio on, getting lost in the vibe and moving the cameras around to make it look like your own movie. What would be the point of revisiting that setting without it being set in the 80s? I mean, I know I suppose we talked about it a bit last week, but do you think that there would be a point? As I know, like the prevailing theory is that yes, it would be set in a modern Vice City. You made the point, that modern Miami, a little bit less glamorous, that even if it was faux glamour, to the Miami of the 80s. Like,
yeah, I mean, no, I whatever they do, like, it should definitely have that time frame in it. I think the thing I sort of suggested was maybe having a game that kind of like hopped through time, so you could see at different points, see how it sort of develops and changes. I think you could have some fun with that. But whatever they do, I agree. Like, that place, that time are essential to like work together. I don't think you can do it without that. But at the same time, I don't know if just that place in that time by itself is necessarily like big or exciting enough or varied enough to necessarily hold whatever game of service intentions they have. But who's to say?
No, that is true.
As long as you can go into a hardware store, buy a hammer, and then hammer people. That's what I really liked in Vice City. Just hitting people with hammers. To a like 16, 17-year-old or whatever, that's just like, hammer time, fantastic.
While Africa plays on the radio. That's what you want. That's what you want.
Banging people with hammers.
So,
here's your Freedom Day. Donk, donk, donk.
Thank you very much to those who sent in questions. We just long show, so we get with a few outstanding. We'll get to them next week. But also, if you have questions, please do email us weekspot@rockpapershotgun.com, and then we may read out your correspondence on next week's YouTube/podcast presentation. So that just about does it for this week's edition of the PC Gaming Weekspot. Thank you very much, dear listener, dear viewer, for listening, for viewing. If you want more of us or more ways to support for Rock Paper Shotgun, there are ways. You can follow us on social media. I am at Colin_Ahern. Matthew is at Mr. Basil_Pesto. Rock Paper Shotgun is at Rock Paper Shot. If you want to talk to some like-minded people, head over to discord.gg/Rock Paper Shotgun. Also, if you want the video version of the PC Gaming Weekspot, head to youtube.com/Rock Paper Shot. But if you want the audio version, subscribe to the Weekspot or any of Rock Paper Shotgun's podcasts, the Electronic Wireless Show or Ultimate Audio Bang, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of your podcatching apps. If you want some Rock Paper Shotgun t-shirts, go to store.readpop.com and you can get some nice garments there. If you want to get an ad-free website and some exclusive content, subscribe to rockpapershotgun.com. Go to rockpapershotgun.com/subscribe. But if you're just looking for some hot PC gaming articles, podcasts and videos and guides and all that, go to rockpapershotgun.com. That's it, Matthew. Another PC Gaming Weekspot.
We did it!
In the bag. But now it is time
I am going to eat an ice lolly.
Ooh, what kind?
I've got some... They're based on R. White's lemonade. It's an R. White's lemonade ice lolly.
Ooh.
Other soft drink brands are available.
Of course. Well, I'm just glad it's not something Bounty flavoured from the freezer. No. Disgusting, vile behaviour.
Not in this house.
But now it's time for my least favourite part of the show. This is the part of the show must bid the listener, the viewer, adieu. So say goodbye, Matthew Castle.
Goodbye.
And say goodbye, Colin Mahern, Sloan Guffaw.